morning, boys and girls. Welcome back. We made it to June. We finished the school year, at least those of us here at Faith did, and we are ready for summer, ready for some rest and some swimming. That's right, Peter. We're supposed to go swimming this week, aren't we? Yeah, I'll get some rest before then. Anyways, moving on, boys and girls. Peter and I have some big plans for the first week out of school. So in 2 Kings chapter 20, we've been talking about the life of Hezekiah. And we had been in chapter 19. We're picking up in chapter 20, the next chapter. Well, we find out in verse 1, it says, "In those days was Hezekiah sick unto death. And the prophet Isaiah, the son of Amoz, came to him and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, set thine house in order, for thou shalt die and not live." He says, you're so sick. You better get things in order. Okay, in today's terminology, make sure your will is up to date. Make sure you have your funeral arrangements because it's coming soon. You're not going to get better. And boys and girls, we only read that one verse, but what do you think Hezekiah is going to do about this? What would be the right response? There you go, Peter. The right response would be to pray about it. Well, let's see if that's what Hezekiah did in verse number 2. Then he turned his face to the wall and prayed unto the Lord, saying. So Hezekiah gets this news, and he doesn't just plead with Isaiah, the man who's standing there. He turns and he talks to God. God is the one who could heal him. This message had come from God. So he goes to the source and he talks to the one who could do something about it. And then verse 3 is his prayer that he prays to God. He says, I beseech thee, O Lord, remember now how I have walked before thee in truth and with a perfect heart and have done that which is good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept sore. Boys and girls, God doesn't expect us to always come to him with a happy face. He wants to hear from us, yes, when we're happy, for sure. But he wants to hear from us when we're having a hard time, when we're upset, when something's bothering us. Boys and girls, God doesn't hide from our tears. He wants to know what upsets us. So Hezekiah goes to him and he prays and he cries and he's upset when he gets this news. Verse 4, and it came to pass, afore Isaiah was gone out into the middle of the court, that the word of the Lord came to him, saying. So Isaiah, who had just delivered this message to Hezekiah, starts to leave. He gets to what's called the middle, or just about to the middle court there, and God talks to him, and he's like, all right, turn around and go back. I got a second message for you to go give to Hezekiah. Boys and girls, in this instance, God answered pretty much right away. He had the answer before Isaiah could even get very far away. God doesn't always answer our prayers right away, but he does answer our prayers. And sometimes we think that means we're always going to get a yes. But sometimes an answer is a no. That's really not what's best for us. Or sometimes that answer is a wait. Now is not a good time for you to have it. But God does always answer our prayers. We just don't always think of it that way because we always want the yes. And we don't always like it when he says no or wait. But God talks to Isaiah and he says, all right, go back and talk to Hezekiah. Verse number 5, turn again and tell Hezekiah, the captain of my people, thus saith the Lord, the God of David thy father, I have heard thy prayer, I have seen thy tears. Behold, I will heal thee. On the third day thou shalt go up unto the house of the Lord. And I will add unto thee 15 years, and I will deliver thee and this city out of the hand of the king of Assyria, and I will defend this city for thine own sake and for thy servant David's sake. He says, all right, God tells Isaiah, who then goes and tells Hezekiah the message that God gave him. He says he's going to add 15 years onto his life. I was kind of thinking about that, boys and girls, and I'm thinking, I'm not so sure I want to know when I'm going to die. I'm not so sure I would have liked to have known that deadline. I'm too much of a negative person or a doom and gloom. I would have been mopey. But God chose to tell Hezekiah it was going to be 15 more years that he would have on earth. But God answered his prayer. And he answered with, I will give you more time. You will be healed. And in 3 days, you'll be healthy enough to go up to the temple or up to the house of the Lord. Verse 7, and Isaiah said, Take a lump of figs, and they took and laid it on the boil, and he recovered. Verse number 8, and Hezekiah said unto Isaiah, what shall be the sign that the Lord will heal me, that I shall go up into the house of the Lord the third day? So when Isaiah comes to talk to Hezekiah, Hezekiah's like, I want a sign. I want to know that what you're telling me is truth. Otherwise, he still needs to prepare for his funeral. He's like, I need to know that what you're saying is true. How can I know that? Boys and girls, sometimes we're unsure what God wants us to do, and we can ask God, please show me what it is that you want me to do. God gave us a brain to think with, boys and girls, and sometimes he does want us to ask questions. Okay, now there's a respectful way to ask questions, and then there's a disrespectful, but in this case, Hezekiah is coming respectfully saying, can you show me a sign? Can you show me that this is what's going to happen? Boys and girls, this sign, God actually even gives him a choice. He says, you can choose it refers to the shadow, okay, but it's the idea of the sun moving because they told time based on how shadows went with a sundial, okay? So he says either the shadow can move forward 10 degrees, so the idea of it gets later, or the shadow can back up 10 degrees as if the sun backed up, and it would be daylight longer. So God actually gives Hezekiah the choice. Which one would you pick, boys and girls? The sun to set sooner or to get 10 more, we'll say 10 more minutes, but 10 more degrees of your day? Yeah, Hezekiah's like, well, the sun naturally is going to go down and it's naturally going to move 10 degrees forward. Why not 10 degrees backward? So he asked that God do that as a sign, and God did. Boys and girls, he fulfilled that sign that Hezekiah asked, and God gave him the choice of. Verse 10, and Hezekiah answered, it is a light thing for the shadow to go down 10 degrees. Nay, but let the shadow return backward 10 degrees. And Isaiah the prophet cried unto the Lord, and he brought the shadow 10 degrees backward, by which it had gone down in the dial of Ahaz. So on the sundial, time essentially backed up because the shadow backed up 10 degrees. Boys and girls, when Hezekiah had trouble, he sought the Lord. Boys and girls, the Lord wants to hear from us. The Lord wants to hear from us when we're sad, when we're upset. He wants to hear from us when we have questions, when we don't understand. And again, boys and girls, there's a respectful way to ask questions and then a disrespectful way. But boys and girls, God wants us to have answers, as in he gave us a brain to think through and reason. Now, we don't always have to have the answer to everything. Sometimes we have to wait. But he does want us to inquire, to ask questions. Hezekiah ran to the Lord when he had a hard time. Boys and girls, do you run to the Lord? Do you go to the Lord with all sorts of things, or do you just pray before your meals, which is awesome to do, but is that the only time you pray? Is it the only time you run to God? Boys and girls, the Lord did what was miraculous. He healed Hezekiah, gave him 15 more years of life, and he was able to make the sun back up, or the time on the sundial back up. He's all powerful. Boys and girls, we serve a great God. Throughout this week, run to him when you have a need, when you have a request, when we're swimming. That's right, Peter. I'm afraid of water, boys and girls. I'm not afraid of water. I'm afraid of drowning. Okay. But run to the Lord and thank him for who he is. He is all powerful and he does perform miracles, and he answers our prayers, boys and girls, because he knows what's best for us.